Ashley. Welcome back to another installment of Lovely Layering with Ashley. I would love to share this technique that I love to use when I'm feeling like my crafty mojo is at a low, or if I want to get really crafty and creative but don't have a lot of ideas. I sit down and I just have a lot of fun. This technique is so much fun and it turns out beautifully every time. There's not a lot of rules. You don't have to keep a lot in mind. It's just sitting down and having fun, which is what being creative is really all about. So for this technique, I'm going to be using the Altenew watercolor brush marker set, and this is the Spring Garden set. And as always, I've linked all of the products in the description if you are interested. Now I'm using a piece of Strathmore cold pressed watercolor paper, and I've cut this in half letter size. So it's 8.5 by 5.5, which is two A2 size cards basically together. So I'm going to be putting out all of the images from this inked Flora stamp set, and I'm going to be stamping them all onto this watercolor paper or cardstock. To make that easy, I just used my full-size MISTI because this size paper will fit perfectly in there, and I'm going to prep my cardstock by using a powder tool. This ensures that the embossing powder that I'm about to pour all over this cardstock will only stick to the ink and where I intend it to stick to. It tends to get a little staticky, and the powder tool just really helps to alleviate some of that static, and then you don't get messy embossing or stray embossing powder. So I'm going to use the Altenew Embossing Ink, and it's a clear, very sticky ink that works great for embossing. And I'm now just going to use some white embossing powder. Now you could use super fine embossing powder. I've gotten some questions before about fine versus super fine. I like to use super fine for when I'm doing small sentiments. So just a standard white embossing powder would be fine for this type of technique that you're doing, or this type of image. Then I'm going to hit that with my heat tool so that it sets. And I'm just going to sort of maneuver this so you can see, because it's going to be really hard until I put the color onto the cardstock. You won't be able to see very much of the image, but I'm about to do that now. So let's just get started. So for these colors, I'm using Rubelite and Warm Sunshine. Now, as I said before, this is something that I do for fun when I want to sit down and get really creative. So I was sort of experimenting here and decided that I wanted to try using this watercolor brush marker directly onto the cardstock. So the point of the technique, or the exercise itself, is to blend these two colors together in one petal. So we're going to make this rainbow flower like you saw in the beginning. And to do that, what I want to do is bring two colors together and blend them so it sort of looks like they just effortlessly blend one into the other, and each petal sort of takes on its own color form. Now, by putting the saturation or the watercolor from the brush marker directly onto the cardstock, it was just way too much saturation. So what I decided to do then was to dispense a little bit of that watercolor right onto my glass mat, and then I'm going to use that clean water and paintbrush to blend the colors together for the remainder of the technique. So what I'll do is wet my paintbrush, pick up a little bit of that color, and put it at the tip of one of the petals. And then I'm going to take another color and put that at the base of the same petal, and then use clean water to sort of just blend those two colors together. Now, when you're thinking of colors that you would like to use in the same petal to blend together, you have to think of the color wheel, or if it's easier, you can think of a rainbow, which is usually how I do it. So the farther you get from each color of the rainbow, the harder it's going to be for those two colors to blend together. And those colors may make mud. So if you're thinking of a rainbow, it's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, just for the sake of purple instead of indigo and violet. And then what you want to do then is keep your colors closest together and they will blend easiest. So if you blend red and orange together, obviously that's going to blend very well. If you blend orange and yellow, yellow and green, green to blue, blue to purple, these will all work well. That's not to say that red doesn't blend with yellow. It does actually quite well. But if you were to try to blend red and green together, that's going to be a little tougher and you're going to get some brown and mudding when you're trying to blend them together. So just to be safe, you want to stay as close together in the rainbow of colors as you can. Like I said, we all have to experiment and have fun while we're doing while we're being creative. So you can always step out of the lines and sort of try new things. But just as a general rule, the farther you get away from colors in the rainbow, the harder they're going to be to blend together. So I hope that helps you a little bit when you're thinking about colors to choose to blend together. I'm moving on to my second flower, which I actually don't end up using on my card, but I've decided to keep this next flower all one color because I wanted to show you that this technique doesn't have to be extremely whimsical. You can use it in a really beautiful, sort of lifelike way. This inked Flora stamp set has these really beautiful large images of sort of whimsical flowers that you wouldn't necessarily find in nature. But these colors that I'm using, this red and yellow color, work really well together. And if you were using it on a lifelike floral, I think that it would look absolutely gorgeous, just like it does here. But I did want to show that you don't have to use this technique as sort of just like a whimsy technique. You can use it absolutely as a beautiful way to blend your watercolors. I've decided to keep the leaves really simple and just green. I'm using a darker green and a lighter green. And again, all of the shades are from the Spring Garden set of watercolor brush markers. So I've decided to use a black cardstock for my card front and my card base. And this is because I really want these colors to pop, but also I want the image of the flower to remain intact. Since the lines of the flower are white, because I used white embossing powder, if I put it onto a white card base, it's going to get a little bit lost. So I knew that I needed a colored cardstock for my card front and card base, and I thought black was just the biggest contrast that I could get. And just to add a little bit more of a painted and artsy look, I'm taking some white gouache and making some splatters. There's really no rhyme or reason to this, and it's not necessary, of course, for the card. But I just thought that it looked kind of fun when it looks a little more artsy, and I like to add splatters to most of my watercolored cards anyway. So now I've just arranged this how I'd like it. Again, the flower is extremely bright and vibrant, so it's taking a lot of your attention. I don't want to do too much to this card, so I'm just going to leave it hanging off a bit, and I will trim that excess, and you'll see that in just a moment again. But I do trim the excess that's hanging off of the side, and then I just add a really nice little sentiment there on the bottom right that says hello, and I've decided to emboss that in white as well, just to sort of match the splatter in the background. I hope that you've enjoyed learning a little bit about how I like to get my crafty mojo back by doing a really fun and simple technique like this. Again, all of the links to the products are in the description, and I hope that you will subscribe to see more inspiration from the Altenew team. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.